Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. This time we're talking about the Fiat Dino, and more specifically the Fiat Dino Spider, this car here, which is a rare beast, and it's in sort of car terms, it's neither fish nor fowl. It's neither one thing nor the other in sort of automotive manufacturing in the 1960s. But it's a very pivotal car indeed in another way. Let me explain about being sort of falling between two stools. You've got the sort of more budget end of the scale, such as the Alfa Romeo Spider, beautiful car though they are, with their lovely four-cylinder twin-cam Alfa Romeo engine, and sort of Fiat 124 Sport Coupe, which was around then, things like that. And then you take a quantum leap to the sort of the start of the exotica, if you like, the likes of the Lamborghini Islero that was around at that time, the Lamborghini 400 GT. And there's a huge gap between those two levels. And very few cars filled that gap in the 1960s. You had the Alfa Romeo Montreal, which had a race-derived, fuel-injected 2.5-litre 4-cam V8 in it, an absolute jewel of an engine. But the rest of the car, the styling was fabulous. It was very, very similar to a Lamborghini Miura in a lot of ways. But the actual underpinnings, the mechanicals, the suspension, was basically derived from the 2-litre Alfa Romeo. So it had a live rear axle, which didn't help traction or handling of that fantastic V8 engine. But this particular car almost falls into the same category. It's between the lower-priced Italian lovely sports cars and the sort of top-end cars. So the Fiat Dino is named after its engine, really, which in turn was named after Enzo Ferrari's son, Alfredino Ferrari. And he died of, it was either leukemia or muscular dystrophy. There are various reports on what he actually died of, but he died in 1956. But the engine he spawned as part of a project with Aurelio Lampredi was to take a V6 engine, which was Dino's sort of baby. That was his brainchild, really, from an earlier, amazingly brilliant Italian engineer of Hungarian descent called Vittorio Jano. And Vittorio Jano produced those amazing straight 8-cylinder racing Alfa Romeos from the 1930s, all those wonderful cars, P2, P3. But the net result was Dino was very involved with this V6 engine. And it was specifically, as it happened, fate sort of took a hand in the situation. In 1956, the FIA announced that they would have an engine of no more than 6 cylinders and no bigger than 2 litres for the new Formula 2 category. So Dino's legacy from all those years ago, and Enzo Ferrari obviously loved his son passionately and was heartbroken when he died, he decided to resurrect the Dino engine for the Formula 2. So that was okay, but then Ferrari had to produce at least 500 of them in any given 12-month period. And that was a problem because at that time, Ferrari weren't producing 500 engines of a particular type a year. So the net result was, this was the start of the relationship between Ferrari and Fiat. Ferrari had famously spurned the Henry Ford II, the grandson of Henry Ford, literally with his pen hovering over the paper to sign an agreement, a joint venture between Ford and Ferrari, to the point where that's where Ford went. Henry Ford II said, right, doesn't matter how much it costs, let's make a car to beat Ferrari at Le Mans. And of course, that was the GT40. But the net result of this was Ferrari couldn't survive on his own. He needed the production capability and the outlet and the cars to put 500 engines a year in to homologate, to make the engine available for Formula 2. So he and Fiat started talking, Ford were out the frame, and they came up with this engine. It's a 4-cam V6, 2-litre, unusually 65 degrees instead of 60 degrees, that the balance of the secondary rocking couple and harmonic vibrations, mechanical vibrations of a V6 are pretty well optimal. One of the optimal angles is 60 degrees between the two banks. This is 65. It's close enough not to matter, but it gives a little bit more space for the induction system between the banks, the carburetors and the inlet manifolds. So this car, the Fiat Dino, was the very first joint venture between Fiat and Ferrari. Fiat needed some kudos. They wanted to be attached to the Ferrari brand, and Ferrari needed an outlet for lots of engines. So the Dino V6 was a marriage made in heaven for Fiat and Ferrari. It was a win-win situation. And Ferrari, I mean, it's so important for Ferrari history because the very first use of this engine in a Ferrari was the Dino 206 GT, the very first mid-engine Ferrari road car. And of course, that set the template for a huge percentage of production Ferraris since, and they're still very much used to this day. But the net result was Fiat. What about Fiat's end of the bargain? They were making all these beautiful engines, and they even stamped Fiat on the cylinder block and the cylinder heads of the engine. Can you believe that? How galling must that have been for Ferrari Dino customers? But anyway, Fiat did it. They made the engines for Ferrari, so they needed a car to put it in. So they went, unusually, for one model, they went to 2 different styling houses for different bodies for the car. So the coupe went to Bertone and the Spider went to Pininfarina. Same underpinnings, the Spider's shorter, and the Spider, it's either a love or hate car a little bit. I mean, it's got these beautiful, sensual Dino curves which became part of the Ferrari Dino, taken from the likes of the 250 Testarossa from the 1950s Ferrari. I mean, just beautiful racing pedigree, sensual curves. The car, I think it's very pretty. I think it's an incredibly pretty car. But from some angles, it doesn't look quite as resolved as some of the other beauties from Pininfarina from the era. A very rare car. In total, including the 2.4 litres, the later cars, they made around about 2,000 Fiat Dino Spiders in the years that they made them. And that's a remarkably low amount for a production car, really. But anyway, it satisfied the criteria, and the V6 was able to be used in Formula 2. These cars are of huge sentimental value to me because I actually had a Fiat Dino Spider when I was 21. I saved up my pocket money and a bit more over the years, and with £1,500 I went to Aintree in Liverpool and bought a pretty shot Fiat Dino Spider from a guy who lived there. And that was the summer of '84, that incredibly hot summer, and I used to drive around in this Fiat Dino Spider 2 litre thinking I was Lord Muck. And I was actually unemployed at the time because I was setting up a business which I started in October that year, Tyrrell Engineering. So I used to go and sign on with my UB40 in my Fiat Dino Spider to get my unemployment benefit. The things we do when we're younger. Anyway, but I had so much fun. That summer from '84 went from April right through to September, glorious sunshine, and I was driving around in a Fiat Dino Spider. What's not to like? So we got this car from somewhere abroad. It arrived here. I was sent photographs of the car and a very detailed description, and the car was a million miles away from how it was described. And we've ended up having to make new floors for the car from scratch. They were all rusty and looked like they'd been welded with chewing gum to the rest of the car. I mean, just a mess. And the engine had supposedly been rebuilt by a Ferrari-engined specialist. When I started it, when we got it off the trailer when it arrived, it was making so much noise, I actually had to stop it after about 5 seconds. And when we stripped the engine, we found that the valve timing was out, the valve to piston timing was out so much, the inlet valves were actually hitting the piston crowns as the engine revolved. Nightmare, and a huge mechanical failure waiting to happen, really. So we had to strip the engine. We took the engine out, weren't expecting it, supposedly just been rebuilt, and we had to go through the whole thing from scratch. And we know now that the engine's fine. We rebuilt it. We put solid exhaust valves in instead of the sodium-filled ones. So this engine is now as sweet as a nut. But it was a bit of a journey to get here with this car, I have to say. But what I've done with the car is had a bit of fun with it. And it's something I've always dreamt of doing. I've altered the induction system and I've altered the exhaust system. When Fiat made these cars, they were very, very quiet, really. The exhaust system had 3 silencers on each side from front to back. It's a V6, so you've got 2 exhausts coming from each bank of 3 cylinders. And these 3 silencers effectively strangled all the beautiful noise from it. So what I've done is we've made a special section for parts of the exhaust system to unleash some of that noise, not illegally, but just it was far too quiet, and now it isn't. It makes the most glorious noise. And again, I've just altered the induction system. I've got rid of that horrendously big air filter that Fiat fitted to them from the factory. Ferrari used a slightly more out there system. They had a sort of a tin plenum chamber on top of the engine with a great big hose pipe going to an air filter by the back wheel. And that actually allowed more of that lovely induction noise through the car. Because these engines, being a race-derived V6, they sound absolutely glorious. It's redlined at 7,700 RPM. You know, there's a lot of noise in there waiting to be unleashed. And it was quite funny because when I was sort of 18, 19, I started messing about with Italian V6s. I had a Fiat 130 Coupe with another lovely sounding V6. And I always thought, wow, if this is what a V6 sounds like, what does a V12 sound like? And when I started to work on Italian V12s, I don't want to sound iconoclastic or sort of underwhelming in any way or disrespectful, but I was a bit disappointed because it actually didn't sound that much nicer than this engine. So I'm sure I'm going to get lots of people saying, oh, that's heresy, you can't possibly say that. Just my personal opinion. So we've fixed this engine up. It had a problem with one of the carburetors, which has dogged it for a long time. I've eventually found that it was a plug that was missing from one of the galleries, one of the air galleries inside the carburetor. They're made up of all sorts of little tubes and galleries inside. So I've plugged that, the same as the other two, and I'm going to take it for a run and see how she performs on the road. And you can hear, hopefully, this lovely noise it makes as well. Yeah, this poor running problem with the middle carburettor has dogged this car, as I said, in the workshop for years. And basically what happens is when you press to accelerate, the accelerator pump, as it's called, in the middle carburettor was not responding. So let's see if it's any better now. Yeah, she's pulling smoothly, so even at low speed, low revs, low load, she's smooth. Still a little bit of a hesitation there. It's possible I'm going to have to readjust this because it's been off kilter for so long. But she's certainly a lot smoother than she was. I'll just slow down and try pulling away from low revs. Yeah, just a tiny bit of hesitation there. I am being hypercritical. Yeah, now the heat is percolating through and the plugs are sort of cleaning themselves up. Yeah, she's pulling more cleanly even already, so that's good news. Yeah. She's great, actually. Very good. I'll just give her a little bit of a head of steam while we're on an open road. I'll just take it down to 1500 revs and we can try the acid test of the cruelty test, as I call it. Because you should never ask a Ferrari engine to pick up from 1500 RPM, but it is a really good test to see whether it's tuned properly or not. So that's fourth gear, 1500 RPM, it's 40 kmh. And there she goes, no hesitation. Yeah. We'll just drop her down a cog or two and try again. Officially like a drug. Like a lot of classic cars, they've suddenly come of age a little bit, really. Cars that were sort of overlooked for years or weren't quite in people's awareness because of the internet and because people are more sort of interested in history now and things like that. The Fiat Dino has come of age. It was sort of a forgotten underdog for decades, really. And that's why so few of them survive now. I remember selling a lovely Spider, very similar condition to this, about 15 years ago, maybe a bit less, for £24,000 and was very happy. Now, cars such as this example is for sale at into six figures. So they really have come on in appreciation, but they're still, compared to a Ferrari Dino, I think relatively good value. It's got 2+2 seating, so you can go out with your friends for a meal or to the pub or for a drive or whatever and enjoy it, four of you, or admittedly a tight squeeze. And you've got the benefit of full open-air motoring, neither of which the Ferrari Dino offers. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, please share, please subscribe, and we'll be back again soon.